I am a chaos machine. Destro Warlock.
We will be checking a couple of tips, how the spec works, what you can expect by going to battle for Azeroth, and how you can get some shit done. Numbers will change, so talents will change, everything is different with artifacts and Azerite traits or whatever they're called. So take this with a grain of salt. This is just for you to get accustomed with the spec going into battle for Azeroth, of course, for that juicy world PvP. Now, with that being said, the PvP guide will take a little while to be updated. You can take the talent if you want, but they're still undergoing testing. Plus, world PvP is different than arenas. Now, with that being said, let's take a look at the AoE Mythic Plus type guide when it comes to talents. And we will be focusing mostly on Conflagrates at the first tiers, where we give it 25% increased damage with flashover and grants an additional charge of backdraft. Yes, backdraft, we have that. That makes our Chaos Bolt and Incinerate have a 30% cast time decrease. It's 30% faster when it comes to casting. Words. So that's really good. Getting an extra stack, of course, works. Now, this works for a single target as well, but not as much as Eradication. So this is why we're taking this for AoE. Reverse Entropy. Have a chance to get 15% haste for 8 seconds whenever you cast spells and in AoE situations. This is really good because you're going to be spamming Incinerates or Immolates on multiple targets, and that will give you extra chances of proccing haste, since you'll have essentially fewer Chaos Bolts. So more spells, more chances of getting haste. Level 45, whatever. But for PvE, Burning Rush is probably the best one that you'll ever get, because, well, you need that extra movement, and with a healer always present, you don't really need to worry about taking that extra damage. Of course, don't abuse it, but you can still take whichever one you want. Level 60, Cataclysm, by far the best one for AoE. You get the Cataclysm spell, functions as before. You target a zone, it explodes for damage and puts Immolate on everybody, and this is going to be very important later on. Let's take you back. I don't want you to keep dealing damage to that. Level 75, I would recommend Dark Fury for Mythic Plus, just because it has more, gives you more Shadow Fury, to say the least. 15 seconds cooldown reduction, takes it down from 1 minute to 45 seconds, which is really good. Of course, in raids you can take Demonic Circle as well, so that's up to you. Level 90, Grimoire of Supremacy is the best one that I think you should take. You can do Roaring Blaze as well, that will work as well, especially with the Conflagrates talent. But I like Grimoire of Supremacy because it buffs AoE and single target as well. Infernal making your Chaos Bolts take a lot more damage. And this works in AoE because you're going to be using Havoc, especially in Cleave boss fights like Fellhounds, for instance, or Coven of Shivara. This is going to be even better, so that can also be counted as AoE, I suppose. Last talent, and probably the most important one, is Channel Demon Fire, which you channel towards the target, and everybody within 40 yards of that target that are afflicted by Immolate, they take damage. So of course this works wonders with Cataclysm, because instead of having to individually immolate everybody, you just pop Cataclysm underneath everybody and then just, you know, channel that greenish Demon Fire, hitting everybody. Very nice, very nice. The more targets you have, the more damage you'll do, of course. This is, of course, for AoE, and you can take this if you want. If you're going to be doing Mythic Plus, I would still recommend a single target, because Destro shines in single target a lot more. And for single target, we have essentially Eradication. I have the ring, so this is why I have Flashover, but Eradication is really good, especially since you're going to be focusing on a single target. It makes those Chaos Bolts even more efficient. In Eternal Combustion, Chaos Bolt consumes 5 seconds of Immolates, as long as you still have 5 or more seconds left, and it deals that damage instant, which means more burst. Seeing as you'll have downtime between Chaos Bolts, since you cannot cast Chaos Bolts forever, reapplying Immolate is not a big waste. It's essentially a DPS game. Of course, 45 again, pick your poison. 60 Cataclysm, just because all of these are shit in single target, so you're probably not going to use Cataclysm anyway. in a boss fight, but yeah, you can take that. Again, 75, whichever one you want. You can take Dark Fury, you can take the Mornic Circle, Mortal Coil, doesn't really help you in single target fights, but Dark Fury to control adds for bosses, I suppose. And of course, level 90, Grimoire of Supremacy, by far the best one. You basically spawn your big infernal dude. Where are you? There you are. And every time you spend soul shards, it makes your Chaos Bolt hit that harder. So let's see, we take a hit for 4.8k, another one for, let's see, 5.7k, and let's see another one. What do we get? What do we get? What do we get? Boom, 6.2k, and it keeps going that high up. I essentially had got Chaos Bolts for over 10k in raid fights. I think I even reached about 20k once. But of course it scales with gear and your crit chance, because Chaos Bolt does deal more damage the more crit strike chance you have. And it's a little bit tricky because crit doesn't seem to be one of the best stats for destro. Haste is, as for all range specs, or pretty much most of them. And then we have Mastery, I think, Intellect, and so on. Crit is probably the bottom one, just because for single target you will be taking a different talent at last row, and we will be taking a look at that as well. And that's actually now. Dark Soul Instability gives you 30% crit chance for 20 seconds, basically boosting your crit. And of course this is more efficient the less crit you have, because, well, as with most secondary stats, there's a soft cap, so crit starts to be less effective the more you have, and the more crit you have, the less effective this talent is, and honestly, neither of these are worth it in single target. So what this means is that you will be popping, let's say you'll have an Immolate on a target, pop Conflagrate, pop your DPS, without the Infernal now this time, and we're gonna just do a Chaos Bolt, and boom, 6k off the bat without the Infernal, 7k after that as well. And you keep going up. Imagine with the Infernal and the talent that you're going to be having, you will deal a lot of single target damage. And yeah, when it comes to passives, we have Backdraft as a passive, which is really nice. And Mastery, which is probably why Mastery is one of the stronger stats. It gives you a flat increase in damage plus a chance to get another increase in damage, scaling from, let's say, 0% to 28% again for me. So it's chaotic because this is the spec. It doesn't feel too RNG. I didn't feel like I had fights where I was shit and fights where I did insane damage. So it kind of rounds up. It's nice to not expect what type of numbers you'll see on your screen. It's very chaotic. It's never the same numbers. So that's really cool. If you like this is how destro feels. You basically are a chaotic damage dealing machine. You never know what will pop out. Of course, Soul Leech is also here for sustain, which means that single target damage spells gives you a shield, similar to Demonology, and that basically helps you sustain. Doesn't work for AoE, of course, but the shield you're probably mostly going to be needing in single target raid fights anyway, since AoE, we can assume that you can control the damage you take with Dark Fury and so on. Now, this is in terms of specs. Let's take a little look at the rotation. Now, when it comes to the AoE rotation, it's fairly straightforward if you have the AoE talent builds. You will have Cataclysm and Channel Demon Fire and Rain of Fire as well. What I like to go, and feel free to let me know if I'm doing this wrong, is basically popping Cataclysm underneath everybody. You pop a Channel Demon Fire and you pop Rain of Fire. And then you spam some Incinerates just so you can get, with Conflagrates of course, for the extra increased cast time, so you can get some soul shards back, Rain of Fire again. You can even spam Immolates if there aren't too many targets. Spam Immolate on everybody, just make sure that they have the dots. Again, Rain of Fire, pretty much 100% uptime on Rain of Fire. And whenever Cataclysm is gonna be back, Cataclysm again, Channel Demon Fire again, rinse and repeat. It's not the best AoE, I gotta give you that. It's not the best AoE. Outside of Channel Demon Fire, it's pretty lackluster. So what you want to make sure that is whenever you always have Immolates out, whenever you have Demon Fire out, spam those shards on Rain of Fire, and that's pretty much it. There will be other classes that will do the AoE rotation better than you will, so I wouldn't recommend focusing too much on this. If anybody needs AoE from a Destro Warlock, they're not taking Destro Warlock for what it is strong at, and that is single target. For the single target rotation, actually it is pretty straightforward and pretty simple. We generate soul shards, we spend soul shards with chaos bolts, and that's it. The only thing that you will realistically need to manage is make sure that you have immolate on the target because of the internal combustion. You want to make sure that chaos bolt does consume the 5 seconds of immolate for the extra damage. And of course, backdraft. You want to always cast chaos bolts with backdraft active for the increased reduced cast time of chaos bolts, because well, it has a fairly lengthy cooldown. 2.5 seconds is a lot of time, which means that you will always want to cast chaos bolt after conflagrate. And since you will be using eradication, you won't have the 2 charges that I do because of the ring. So let's say you conflagrate 1 chaos bolt, conflagrate 2nd chaos bolt. The ideal situation. Now, when the fight starts, of course, pre-pod and all that jazz, you want to start with Incinerate because it has travel time, so you can essentially start before the tank pulls to make sure that they synergize and hit at the same time, and then Immolate. And what I like to do is pop 1 conflagrate and then just spam Incinerates until I'm almost 100% on the shards, because you don't want to cap, since the last bit of shards either will be generated passively by the Immolate or you will get through conflagrate. Now, when I'm almost full, I will pop the Infernal, I will pop the DPS cooldowns, make sure that Immolate is still active if it fell off, and then conflagrate again, and then Chaos Bolt. Chaos Bolt, conflagrate, Chaos Bolt, no conflagrate, still cast Chaos Bolt, and then refresh Immolate, Immolate, Incinerate, Incinerate, conflagrate, Chaos Bolt. You don't really want to use conflagrates anymore, you want to save them for Chaos Bolts. And then let's see, I have already my Immolate is dropping off, make sure that it's back on, and then Chaos Bolts, Chaos Bolts. You're gonna have a lot of shards with the Infernal up, which is really good. And then Immolate again, conflagrate, Chaos Bolt, and that's it. Fantastic, complicated stuff, man. Not really, but that's about it. Depending on your haste, depending on your gear, and depending if you have the tier set bonuses, the rotation might change a little bit. I will talk a little bit about the tier sets. I only have the 2 pieces right now, but it does change a little bit how my priority works. Just because I have this ring, and if you have this one, conflagrate will give you 2 charges of backdraft with the Soul of the Netherlord, which means you only have to conflagrate once and you can do 2 chaos bolts off of it. That means that you can essentially also use conflagrate on generating shards with faster incinerates as well. That's a little bit of extra management. You can ignore all of that if you take eradication and if you don't have the ring. Now, if you do have the tier set bonus, which currently gives you, let's see, on the 2-piece, Chaos Bolts increases the critical strike chance of Incinerate on the target by 40%, which means also extra shards, because when it crits, when all of your spells crit, you generate more shards. So what this means is, let's say the target has Immolate, you pop Chaos Bolt and it will get a debuff. And boom, those are the debuffs. Damage increased from the talent, and this is Chaotic Flames. You have 40% increased crit chance, which means that when you Chaos Bolt or after you Chaos Bolt, you kind of want to spam some Incinerate with the increased damage, right? So Incinerates, I usually do a couple depending on your haste, and when I have enough shards back up, I refresh with Chaos Bolts. But this means that the only time when I'm doing back-to-back Chaos Bolts is when I'm full on shards and I have the Infernal out. When it's a normal rotation, you just want to make sure first that Immolate is on the target and that you're generating shards with Incinerates. You can stop at 2, pop the Chaos Bolts, ideally with Conflagration, and then refresh that Immolate since it's probably going to drop off, and then Incinerate again, taking advantage of Chaotic Flames to get that increased damage. Conflagrate, Chaos Bolt, Immolate, and then again Incinerate, and the more haste and crit you have, the less you need to use Conflagrate on Incinerate. You can just save them up for Chaos Bolts, since you'll probably be able to cast more Chaos Bolts like that. And this is pretty much it. This is pretty much the single target rotation. It's not very difficult. It's very little to manage, not unlike Demonology and Affliction as well. So it's simple, it's straightforward, it's satisfying to hit. I would highly recommend you guys try this out as well. Of course, Gear helps a lot, stats helps a lot, so do keep that in mind as well. And let's take a quick look at some fights. A very good example of an opening rotation on a boss when it comes to single target, of course, is right when the pull time almost ends. You start with an Incinerate and then Immolate, of course. And then you want to pop your Infernal and your DPS cooldowns and start using Conflagrate and Chaos Bolt. Chaos Bolt, Conflagrate. Make sure to keep that uptime on Immolate, so cast it back up again. Use those 2 shards on Chaos Bolt, then Incinerate, Conflagrate, Chaos Bolt again. Not, of course, before you make sure that your Immolate is there, because Chaos Bolt will consume the duration, 5 seconds of it. And then you rinse and repeat. You want to generate shards with Incinerate, consume them with Chaos Bolt. Now, I generate the shards with Immolate by using Conflagrate as well, because I have the ring that gives me the 2 stacks of Backdraft. But ideally, you just want to use Backdraft only with Chaos Bolt. And then you rinse and repeat, and this is pretty much it, nothing else. You can just make sure that you're a good Warlock and have portals up, but aside from that, just do your thing. And of course, we will be taking a look at a cleave fight as well, which is also what we actually shine on. For 2 targets, especially ones that share HP, you will be using the Havoc spell, which will mirror the spells you cast on somebody else, on the target that has Havoc. So you want to pretty much start the same way with Incinerate on the target and then Immolate, and then quickly put Havoc and start your rotation, your actual rotation on the second target with Conflagrate, Chaos Bolts, Infernal and all that good jazz, and you will start casting Chaos Bolts on both targets. And then you continue with your normal rotation, with one addition, that you will keep your Immolate up on both targets. So you need to make sure that you refresh that. Even before activating Havoc again, you want to make sure that both targets have a full duration of Immolate, so those Chaos Bolts can eat up those Immolates for maximum damage. And of course, when you see your Havoc coming back off cooldown, you want to make sure you have as many shards as possible. Have Immolate on both targets, activate Havoc, and then quickly Conflagrate, Chaos Bolt, Conflagrate, Chaos Bolt until you deplete all of your shards, and rinse and repeat. Restack them both with Immolate, generate shards, and wait for the next Havoc to come off cooldown. And this is pretty much it with Cleave fights. You should be wrecking the DPS meters with this, because this is what makes destro so good. Probably one of the best DPSers. Of course, we have other classes that do this as well, but come on, double Chaos Bolts, how good can that be? And this is pretty much it, my impression of the Destro Warlock and how I think it should be played. If you disagree, please let me know in the comment section below. I love this class, and if you think I've missed something, don't hesitate to let us know. Give your tips and tell us what you do and what you play with it. Of course, the PvP guide is in the making, so stay tuned for that as well. And of course, subscribe and enable those notifications for more Warlock content, for more PvP, PvE content when it comes to Battle for Azeroth. We do daily videos, so check those out as well. And until next time, guys, peace!